no drone zone. Oh shit!
So I went to Trump's military parade down in DC. Technically, it's for the 250th anniversary of the US Army and Flag Day, but it's also Trump's birthday, so that's a little bit controversial. But I just came solely to see the tanks. The last military parade in DC was like 30 years ago, so I think it's also going to be good to document this historic event. So to get there, I actually took a coach bus from New York City down to DC. The parade starts relatively late in the day at like 6:30 p.m. So before that, I visited the Air and Space Museum. I got to see the Mars rover and the SR-71 Blackbird. They had to wear these special suits in atmosphere. So after that, I started going to the actual parade. It's not too far from the museum. They actually have this festival area where you can explore the different army careers. And this was the line for it. It's actually quite long. And on the other side, you can see that's where the Capitol building is. And there was a guy on his megaphone talking about Jesus. Now while walking around, I did hear that they have 2 separate security checkpoints. Even if you go to the festival, you have to go to another one for the actual parade. So I thought it would be a good idea to just go to the parade one, which was like 2 blocks down. Here I thought this guy had a pretty cool Ukrainian flag. So here was the entrance to go to security for the parade. And apparently you do have to line up all the way down the street. And oh my god, it was actually pretty long. There also were some people holding up signs to protest against Trump. At the same day, the No Kings protest was like all around the country. So here's the end of the block where the line actually curves, and it's actually multiple lines that zigzag across. And here I've been roughly waiting an hour and finally got to like the last line. But then suddenly in the sky there was a bunch of these army parachuters, which was pretty cool, but we weren't at the parade yet. Then a bunch of people start cutting here on the right, just walk across. Then gradually people started realizing the parade had actually started, but they're still waiting. So then everyone started cutting the line, so you have to cut the line as well. And it just became a big mob and the lines just disappeared. And later I found out they actually started the parade 30 minutes earlier due to concerns about a thunderstorm, but it turns out there was no real thunder or even rain. There was just a little bit of drizzle. And we still haven't arrived to the security checkpoint. So what's frustrating about this is that you know the parade's already going on. So then they lead you to this maze, which is kind of like what they do at TSA. And there is a security drone flying in the sky. So yeah, we pretty much have to just walk like this back and forth. And then the people behind us, they sort of just went off their own. I guess they were directed to go a different route. And then under the tents, that's where they have the security checkpoints. And they tell you to go down the line and you just enter one of these areas, which they did tell me to turn on my camera. And by this time, it was around 7:14. The parade was supposed to start at 6:30, so I'm thinking, yeah, I pretty much missed most of everything. So I just start walking around, and there's a bunch of these anti-scaling fencing and these people watching from the hill, and passing through are some strikers. But definitely this view was not that great. I couldn't really see much, but I did notice they have this overpass bridge, so I decided to go up that. Definitely this place is way better to see all the parade stuff. Even got to see some soldiers marching. Unfortunately, this part is also covered by nets, but you can see the strikers, they actually make a turn in that street there.
Hey sir, so I think the biggest issue that we're having here on the bridge, we've got people leaving now, but we need the people coming down, they're not able to get down.
Now here was the jackpot shot. A bunch of strikers in formation. They move pretty slowly, and way down in the back we can see a HIMARS. It's interesting, the striker in the front had kind of this radar dome. The next up was the M2 Bradley fighting vehicle painted in this OD green. It's interesting, if you look closely, you can see the Bradley and the HIMARS. They actually have a different green color. But unfortunately, you can't stay on the bridge forever. You have to go. And on the way down, I noticed they did block off this whole area. And these strikers, they have these boxes on the top. And here comes their HIMARS, and you can see they have a little bit of tan piece in the back of that. And only after I was editing, I realized you could still see the soldiers marching. And I was actually surprised to see the Abrams tank. I was pretty late, so I did try to rush over to see as quick as possible. And pay close attention to the sound of this tank. Yeah, I definitely love the sound of the treads moving and the gas turbine engine. But what's not so great is the anti-scaling fence. It just ruins the view. Not to mention these big signs for no drones.
I would have had eyes right.
Now Now this is definitely one of the most epic moments. It's pretty cool helicopter formation. Some AH-6 Little Birds, followed by some Pavehawks and Chinooks. I love that they have the US flag flying in the doorway. Also, these helicopters have refueling booms. So next up we have the M109 A7 Paladin, which is a self-propelled howitzer. I like the sound of its engine. And then there was another Striker. I really hate this tall fencing. It just obscures the view and just looks plain old ugly to have if you're taking a photo. You know, I get it, it's for security purposes, but yeah, I think they went overboard with this. Some people did try filming through the holes, so I tried it for myself and here's what it looks like. And I noticed they started recycling these vehicles, like they show the same vehicles over and over again. Oh look, there's a No Kings protester. Here we got a green JLTV, gotta replace the Humvee. And there actually was a lot of M1 Abrams tank in this. And sometimes they would randomly speed up and the crowd goes wild. Later there was the M1083 truck pulling this M777 howitzer, which is also currently used in the war in Ukraine. Then came these guys wearing these red berets. Notice they checked the clearance for the antenna so it doesn't get snagged on the bridge.
Damn, we good?
And here came a Humvee with the M119 towed howitzer, very small. And then there was this Jeep vehicle which I've never actually seen before. Apparently it's an M1301 infantry squad vehicle. It's a light utility vehicle designed for high speed with no doors. And these guys were asking the people in the vehicles to honk the horn, but apparently it went out. And then came this armored M1083 with the M777. And they also had big blue water dispensers. Yeah, definitely the Apache attack helicopter is iconic. Very cool to see in person.
Oh, this is a no drone zone.
Yeah, this is actually pretty fun to see the drones, because everyone knows how much FPV drones are used in Ukraine. It's good to see the US Army has adapted, and some soldiers in camo. Then we have a huge formation of UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters, and all the aerial displays, they look really nice and epic. It's like the only thing I can really clearly see without that fence in the way. And it's pretty funny that these guys, they were forced to hold up these drones in their hand. Maybe they ran out of battery. And then came another 8 Black Hawks. I believe there were 16 in this parade.
Look at that. Oh, shit. Oh, shit.
Then came a bunch of CH-47 Chinooks. And this is also pretty funny, but they had robot dogs. It's like Spot carrying the US Army flag. I know it can be dystopian to see a military robot dog, but honestly it's kind of cute. They also had this remote-controlled wheeled vehicle, and it has a machine gun. This one's actually a little bit more scary. Probably a primitive design. Maybe in the future they'll get even more advanced. Maybe something like this is actually kind of like a mini tank with tracks. This is the Textron M5 Ripsaw. Apparently it's also electric. Honestly, if I didn't come to this parade, I wouldn't know about this. So that was pretty much the end of the parade, and I started just walking around the Washington Monument. Very historic area, and then here is the crowd size, which I know later on when I went back home, that's all the media was talking about. There also was some kind of a marching band. And over there you can actually see Trump on a screen.
That I will support. Welcome to the United States Army and have a great life. Thank you very much. Have a great life.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't know there was like this huge crowd over in this area. But it was pretty much time to go home, or at least back to the hotel. And it was interesting to see that taco meme in real life. So everyone's just walking the street because it's all blocked off by dump trucks and police cars. And that guy with the Ukrainian flag is still out here bicycling around, staying with Ukraine. And the next day I went walking out to the mall. So here is the day after the parade. They still have these anti-scaling fences everywhere, and I wasn't even sure if I was allowed to go inside. So I asked a police officer, and they said they didn't know, asked the Secret Service, and they're like, oh, it's fine, they're just taking down the fencing. So apparently this was the parade route, and note, there is no anti-scaling fences throughout the whole thing. Apparently this was the area you're supposed to stand in. If I went further out to this area, I would actually be able to take good pictures and videos. So I deeply regret not exploring the whole thing. So I kept walking around the National Mall, and they're taking down the fencing, lots of these workers. Now the reason also why I'm taking this walk is to go to Potomac Park, where I heard the tanks are at. But along the way I visited the World War II Memorial. They have two sides, the Atlantic and the Pacific. This day was actually drizzling and foggy, and to the side there is this wall with 4,000 gold stars. Each one represents 100 service members, so over 400,000 American troops died in World War II. Now on the way to the Lincoln Memorial, there's this nice pond area. Also DC has a ton of joggers, and there's some ducks just sleeping with their eyes open. There also was this mother duck with her ducklings, and one of the ducklings fell in the water and was trying to get out of the pool. And eventually it went back home to mama. It is kind of sad to see all these security fencing everywhere. So here's the Lincoln Memorial, and never realized they had state names on it. New York's on the very end. And there's the famous Lincoln statue. Yeah, very nice to see. So after that, I visited the Korean War Memorial. I like that they have pretty detailed equipment, like this guy has a radio. That guy's carrying some ammunition. Talked to another guy with a gun on his shoulder. And I like the fact that it's raining and it just adds to the atmosphere. You know, the conditions where they might have fought in battle. There actually was a lot of participants in the Korean War, not just the US, so all these other countries. They sent troops as part of the UN forces. And there's a list of the names of soldiers who gave up their lives. So here's the US Army, a bunch of names. Even you can see a lot of Korean names as well. And this list just goes on and on and on. And it circles back the other way all around to the memorial. And here's the front view of it. And then to the side of it, there's like this nice artistic wall, like a portraits of all the soldiers from all the different countries. So I kept walking on towards Potomac Park, and this is like the staging area for the vehicles. And I believe these are the metal mats that they put in the ground so it doesn't damage the roads. There was that World War II tractor. Right now they're loaded up on some low boys getting ready to leave, I guess. You know, these vehicles I never got to see because I was so late to the parade. And I wonder what that vehicle is. So here the workers start tearing down this anti-scaling fence and they leave all these materials. It's actually pretty simply made, just a bunch of screws. I also saw a World War II ambulance. And at this moment, this is where I discovered they still have the Abrams tank there. So this is where they store the vehicles before and I guess after the parade, a bunch of Bradleys as well. Now I can only view it from a distance because I'm pretty sure I'm not allowed to go over there. And I noticed one of them have a red cap on the barrel. That was interesting. But yeah, it was pretty cool to see sort of like a behind the scenes of the parade. This is where they're stored. They also have the M88 Hercules recovery vehicle. So I kept walking around the park and try to find more areas where I can spot the vehicles. They also have the M109 Paladin over there as well. Now some part of the park is actually under construction. I kept walking around, and I guess this is the base where they have a staging area. Maybe that's where the troops are at. So inside you can see two M88s. They're in the desert tan unlike the other vehicles. And here is another view. And cool, they have a sign that says steel plates. Before I came here, I actually wasn't too sure about the OD green. I was preferring the tan, but actually kind of getting used to it now. They look pretty cool. Now here's yet another place I found to look at the tanks, just over this hill, which they do still have some fencing around it. And there it is. You can see there actually is a bit of security or some guy in a cart. There's the Paladin, Bradleys, the Abrams, the Hercules. And there's a couple of these dudes hanging around like soldiers. And yeah, this is gonna be the last time I'm gonna see these tanks, so I just want to get as many shots as I can. So after that, I visited the Vietnam War Memorial and actually had no idea this statue existed. All I knew, they had this shard that goes into the ground. It's very iconic. And the Vietnam War wasn't actually that long ago, so there's still a lot of loved ones putting down flowers. And the walls are just covered in names of all the people who have died in the war. The next day was also Father's Day, so there was also this memorial. There's a lot of these tokens and portraits. Here's a Marine, Kenneth Kessinger. Apparently he was only 21 when he passed away. And there actually is a book in the front where you can see all the names and which section their name is inscribed. So while I was in the area, I decided to go to Arlington National Cemetery. You have to cross this bridge which goes over the Potomac River. I noticed there's a Marine Corps flag on the lamppost. There's a memorial called the Hiker for the Spanish-American War, and another memorial for the Seabees. This guy's ripped, and I didn't know this, but they actually have a metro station. So here is the entrance to Arlington National Cemetery. You have to visit the visitor center and do a security check, and you can sign up for a tram tour for like 20 bucks, which I highly recommend because it's a lot of walking otherwise. So here's the shuttle they use. It's kind of like a van and it's like a road train kind of. There are a lot of people coming in groups, but I was by myself, so I was able to hop on this extra space. And this big monument is actually the Military Women's Memorial, where any military woman, you can actually upload yourself into their database. And this cemetery is very extensive. Here's the iconic like headstones around, and there are these larger gravestones donated privately, mostly officers. So another benefit of the tram is that you can actually get on and off at different stops. So this is one of the areas, and this is the far side of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, so everyone gets quiet. We're going to visit that very soon. And this cemetery is very extensive with so many headstones from all the major wars that the US fought. Like this area here are soldiers from World War I. Here's the Civil War, which almost half of the soldiers were unknowns. We also have the USS Maine, which the US entered the Spanish-American War after it exploded in Havana Harbor. And they actually have a view of the Pentagon building, the same side that was hit during 9/11. And here's the US Coast Guard Tampa Memorial that was sunk by a German U-boat in World War I. And here is the Spanish-American War Memorial, which the two black guns are actually used in combat, captured from the Spanish. And here's the stop for the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. Pretty much if you're going to the cemetery, you should definitely visit this part, which everyone is getting off. So once you go around the building, here is the Memorial Amphitheater. I had no idea this part existed. So if you go around to the other side of the amphitheater, there is sort of like this porch area, and this is where you can watch the tomb guard for the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. These are soldiers whose remains could not be identified, and these are guarded 24/7 by these tomb guards. It's also very quiet. Now it was drizzling, so this is why they're wearing these raincoats. And you can see people are walking on the other path. And what's notable is that every hour the tomb guard actually changes, which starts when you hear the bell. And here comes the relief commander.
I am Sentinel Segura.
And basically he inspects the incoming sentinel.
March!
And they perform the changing of the guard ceremony.
Out!
Now if you guys want to see the full thing, I do have a separate video you can watch. So after the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, you can get back on the trolley. This one has a different design. I think they alternate between the two. And then here is the Arlington House. This is built by George Washington Parke Custis, who was the adopted grandson of George Washington. Now if you go further over there is a nice American flag flapping, and then here you can see all around the distance the cemetery and the surrounding area. And there's Lincoln Memorial and the bridge that we crossed to get here. Now this house is actually part of a plantation, and George Washington Parke Custis' daughter actually married Robert E. Lee in this very room, and this is where they lived together as a family. And here's a portrait of Robert E. Lee when he's 31, a lieutenant in the US Army, but he decided to side with the Confederacy, and after the Civil War he asked for a pardon, which was denied until 1975. President Gerald Ford signed a pardon for him on that desk. So then we hop back on the trolley, and these markers have USCT, which is the US Colored Troops. So these are African American soldiers who fought in the Civil War, even though they were not granted citizenship until after the war when they passed the 14th and 15th Amendments. So that was pretty much it for my trip in Arlington and Washington DC. It was very nice to see the troops up close, and finally I got to see the Abrams tank moving, which I wanted for a very long time. I do have two big mistakes. One, which was not going to the festival area, which probably would have been faster, and that's what they recommended. And number two was not exploring the parade route fully, where I could have taken a lot better pictures without that annoying fence. But at least you could see my personal point of view of the parade and experience a different perspective from what you see on the news and TV. I did see some posts on Reddit sharing that the parade was practically empty, but for me, I don't think that's entirely true. I think the organizers did mess up as well, since there was a huge line of people still waiting when the parade started, including myself. Not to mention they started 30 minutes ahead of schedule, so by the time I arrived there, people were already leaving going the other way, and they probably should not have put in that anti-scaling fence. They're probably worried about the No Kings protesters, but there was only a couple people, so definitely could have been managed a lot better. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Comment below if you have any thoughts, subscribe if you hadn't already, and thank you to all the men and women who served and sacrificed their lives for this country.